Adoption is such a vast subject that if you really have a heart to adopt, it can feel very overwhelming to try to figure out where to go, what to do, what's what. So in this video, I'm gonna talk about the different types of adoptions, their costs and their timelines, give you as much information as I can so that you can make the right decision for your family. So before we get started, make sure to subscribe to my channel, hit that like button, and also hit the bell button to be notified when I post a new video every single week. All right, guys, let's dive right in. Let's talk about all the different types of adoption. So there's really three main types of adoptions. There's newborn adoption, there's foster care adoption, and then there's international adoption, okay? So I'm gonna talk about one of them at a time, and then I'm gonna talk about the cost and then the timeline as well. So let's start with foster care adoption. Foster care adoption is when you are actually adopting a child from foster care whose parents' rights have already been terminated. There's a difference between that and being a foster parent, okay? A foster parent, your job is to foster and to be a safe home for that child until that child is able to go home. But if you're wanting to adopt from foster care, then you can. You don't have to. I think a lot of times when people think of adoption, they immediately think that they want to adopt a baby, but they're not realizing that they can actually adopt older children, like children in foster care, okay? And so you can adopt a child from foster care, and the way that you do that is you can go through your state's Heart Gallery's website. It's like Missouri Heart Gallery or Nebraska Heart Gallery or Iowa Heart Gallery. And on that Heart Gallery, you will see pictures of children who are available to be adopted right now. Their parents' rights have been terminated and they're just waiting for a forever family. And so you can browse through that and kind of, you know, if that's your heart, you can decide, okay, I want to adopt a sibling strip, or I want to adopt this child, or oh my gosh, they're so, you know, I want them in my home. I mean, it's really hard to look through a Heart Gallery and I want to take all those children home, okay? But of course, not everyone can adopt every child. So you want to make sure that, you know, your heart is being pulled towards a specific child, like, oh man, I'd love to give this child a home. And so for foster care adoption, that's kind of how you do it. You go through the Heart Gallery, through your state, and then you can contact the contact person and start the process that way. So when it comes to cost, foster care adoption doesn't cost you anything, which makes it the least expensive way to adopt, okay? Some people think that they have to spend some money, but I mean, when you're foster parenting, the state is reimbursing you from the money that you're spending to foster your children. So when it comes time for adoption, the state will also provide an attorney for you to finalize the process because they don't expect you to spend money to adopt a foster child. And so the foster care adoption process, that the legalizing of the adoption, is also free of charge for you because, like I said, the state provides an attorney for that. Now, as far as timeline is concerned, it really depends on your state. Some states move pretty quickly, some states are pretty slow, and it also depends on how ready you are. So if you're serious about adopting from foster care, you want to make sure that you get your home study done and that you become a licensed foster parent, which can take 6 to 9 months. So I usually recommend for folks, you know, you want to get your home study done first. You want to become a licensed foster parent first, get all of your ducks in a row. Then by the time you're looking into the Heart Gallery and you're like, okay, we're ready to adopt, and you contact a caseworker about a certain child, you can present them your home study right away. Like, we're ready to go. We've got our stuff done. Versus looking through the Heart Gallery, finding a child that you really feel bonded to, like, oh, I'd love to adopt this child. Then you call the caseworker. They're like, well, we need your home study. And then you're like, oh, shoot, I need to now do all of that stuff. That could take 6 to 9 months. So that's usually my recommendation. So timeline depends on you a lot of times. It also depends on the state and how long they take to process adoption applications. All right, so now let's talk about newborn adoption. A newborn adoption is when you're adopting a baby. I know that's like common sense, but for those who are super new to adoption, a newborn adoption is when you're adopting a baby. And so there's so many different ways that you can adopt a baby. I think that's also what confuses people, because there are so many different ways that you're not sure which way would be best for you. Like, if I go this way, is that gonna work? If I go that way, is that gonna work? And so newborn adoption, when you're adopting a baby, you can choose the type of professional that you wanna work with that works specifically with newborn adoptions. If you can check out this video right here where I go into detail about how to go through that process and the steps that you need to take. And you can also go through this video right here if you wanna know more about the breakdown details of the cost. So let's talk about timeline. So for timeline, a newborn adoption can take a year, 2 years, years, again, it depends on so much. Like, how ready are you? How financially ready are you? Are you ready to do your home study right now? Do you already know the type of professional that you want to work with? So there is a period where you really need to be prepared before you start. And it's kind of like buying a house. When you want to buy a house, you don't just go find a house next week and sign a contract, right? You take the time to learn about what neighborhood do I want to live in? Do I like this neighborhood? What kind of house do I want? You look at the different houses, and then you go on tours and you look at all the different, and there's so much preparation that goes into buying a house. And I'm not using this as like this is the same thing as a newborn baby. I'm just saying in general, whenever you're making a major decision, there's a preparation time period that you take to really learn the process, learn how this goes. So by the time you actually make that decision, you're ready to go, because you've already done the prep work. It's the same thing with a newborn adoption. You're not just going to go adopt a baby next week, because you need to know and be prepared for what to expect. How does this work? What's the best place to adopt? Is an agency the best for me? Is a consultant the best for me? Is a lawyer? How much does this cost? So if that's you and you're trying to figure out like, I don't even know where to start, I have the Adoption Journey Kickstart that's made just for you. You can click the link below to check it out. But if you're just starting out, the Adoption Journey Kickstart will show you the right first steps that you need to take to even make those decisions. Which professional should I choose? What type of adoption, newborn adoption am I trying to do? It'll give you a foundation to work with to start building on, okay? Because having that preparation, that foundation is so important. So yes, for newborn adoption, there's a lot of different ways that you can adopt. As far as the cost is concerned, people usually think that newborn adoption costs a lot of money. Not necessarily. I've done adoptions through my law office that cost my clients $10,000. I've done adoption that cost my clients $20,000, and I know others who have adopted for $40,000 or more. If I were you, I wouldn't look at the cost as much as I'm looking at the way that I'm actually laying the foundation for my adoption. In my experience, the reason why folks lose so much money so quickly with their adoption is because they didn't take the right steps at the very beginning. So if you start doing your home study right away, if you just Google adoption agencies in Connecticut and pick the first one that you see and you give them your money, and then you find out later, oh, I didn't know there was a lawyer that I could use, you just lost a lot of time and money doing that. When if you actually took the time to lay the groundwork down for you, you'll actually end up saving money because now you know what to do, you know what to stay away from, and so forth. So for the cost of adoption, for newborn adoption, it's hard to give you a specific number because there are a lot of factors in play when it comes to the cost. It depends on the type of adoption professional that you're going to be using, what mom is asking for. You may be in a state where mom can ask for pregnancy expenses and work things and all of that. That also adds to the cost. If mom doesn't have medical insurance, you may have to pay for some of those costs as well. I'm not guaranteeing you that your newborn adoption is not going to cost $40,000, but what I am saying is that, again, in my experience, people have wasted a lot of money, and that's why they end up spending that much. Okay, now let's talk about international adoption. International adoption has declined over the years. It used to be that Americans adopted internationally a lot, and that's declined so much. I mean, so many things have happened over the years. Obviously, 2020 had a huge dent in international adoptions, and the Russia-Ukraine war and all of these other things politically, where some countries have actually shut their doors to Americans adopting. But despite all of that, it doesn't mean that you can't adopt internationally. You still can. You just have to find the country that's still open to the US where you can adopt. So for timeline for international adoptions, it depends on the country that you're adopting from. Some countries are quicker than others when it comes to that. And so I really can't give you a timeline on that. I wish I could, but I know the average is about 2 to maybe 4 years. I would say 4 years is that's a long time, but there is a range of time because you're dealing with 2 different countries. You're dealing with the US and dealing with, let's say, Colombia. And so they may ask you paperwork, and I actually know a lot of families that did international adoptions where what actually made the process longer was that the other country kind of changed their laws during the adoption process that caused them to have to go back and refill paperwork and all that kind of stuff. So the timeline depends, because the timeline for, let's say, Romania could be 2 years right now, but you may start the adoption process and Romania may change their laws and now you have to start paperwork all over again, and that now makes it 3 years for you, okay? So again, the timeline depends, but an average is about 1 to 3 years. When it comes to the cost, International adoption is the most expensive way to adopt a child. Again, because you're dealing with two different countries, and so it's gonna just cost you more. But don't let that deter you, because you can fund your adoption. In this video right here, I went into detail about all the different ways that you can fund your adoption, even your international adoption, so that you're not coming out of pocket for all of this money by yourself. So on average, an international adoption can cost anywhere between $20,000 to maybe $50,000, maybe more, just depending on the country, depending on how many children you're adopting, and so on and so forth. So that number seems really alarming, but you're not paying all that money up front. Like, you're not just dropping $50K with an agency to adopt a child. You know, it's in increments. And so if you're willing to do it and you're willing to figure out all the other ways that you can fund your adoption, it is absolutely possible to adopt internationally. And there's so many families that have done it. I have families that have adopted siblings internationally. I have a friend of mine, Katya, who actually adopted 3 children internationally, and she's a teacher. So it's not like she was living in money, swimming in money, but her and her husband adopted 3 children internationally. So it is possible to do that. You just have to know that if it's something that God has called you to do, He will provide the way, and He will also provide the funds for you to do it. All right, so those are the 3 main types of adoptions that you will encounter when you're doing your research. Comment below and let me know which one. Are you wanting to adopt from foster care? Are you wanting to adopt a newborn? Or are you wanting to adopt a child internationally? Comment below and let me know. All right, guys, make sure you check out this next video coming up. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and share this with your friends. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.